Welcome to the Atomico Coffee With series, where we showcase the real stories behind the greatest founders we have the privilege to work with. In this episode, we sit down with Dexory co-founder Oana Jinga.
Let's go.
Dexory is revolutionizing the warehousing and logistics industry with AI and advanced robotics. Let's start at the beginning. We'd love to hear a little bit more about your background, the career journey you've been on, and how you ultimately came to be using AI and robots to transform the warehousing and logistics industry.
No, thank you so much for having me, Ben, and really excited to be able to talk a little bit about my personal history and also our company. If I go way back, because a lot of people ask me, have you always kind of known that you're going to be an entrepreneur? And the answer is definitely not. I mean, I come from a family of 7 doctors. I think my career path was predetermined long before I was born.
Okay.
I rebelled, of course, and decided to go into a very, very different direction and actually get into management and marketing in university. And after that, enter the tech industry through that angle rather than obviously the typical software development side that a lot of people do. I was privileged enough to spend some time at 2 really large technology companies, one of them being Telefonica, and then at Google for just under 7 years, and learning from the best how to build teams, how to take products to market, how to invent things that have never existed before. So about 10 years ago, when myself and my other 2 co-founders started playing around with the idea of creating a robot. Initially, it was going to be a weekend project, like a small prototype thing on a 3D printer, and then slowly started to turn into a business. But the journey was definitely not an easy and straightforward one, overnight 10-year success. But I think, the robotics angle came more from one of my co-founders, Andre, and I kind of came to around, okay, what kind of robot, who's going to use it, why do you even want to build that, and where do you want to take it? So my journey into robotics was more from the angle of the customer than anything else.
Well, let's definitely come back to that in a minute, but maybe a couple of questions. One would be, how did the conversation go with your parents when you told them, right, I'm not going to be a doctor, I'm not going to med school, I'm going to go and do something different?
Yeah. No, to be honest, I mean, my parents have supported me all the time to just do whatever I wanted that would make me happy. And I think the interesting thing throughout my school years, I think I toyed with so many different ideas. There was a point where I wanted to go into cinematography. Another time where I just wanted to do architecture. So for about 6 months, I prepared for like a very ruthless exam to get into architecture school at the time. Then wanted to do acting. So I think they really kind of entertained all my passions to make sure that I choose something that I wanted to go into. So always had their support.
Do you ever look back to any of those other career paths and go, I wish I'd been an architect today?
Not really. I feel like all the preparations that I've done for those things are helping me in what I do as a founder, because you end up doing so many random things. And I feel like that's in a way kind of brought skills to my portfolio that, it's just kind of helping me in what I'm doing now. But I don't think I would go back and change it now.
No regret about not being a surgeon or a doctor?
No, definitely not. Blood and no.
No. And I guess there was a kind of a big jump in that journey, in that story, where you decided to leave Google and actually kind of take the entrepreneurial leap. What was the thought process that was the right time and that you were ready to go and try and do something of your own?
Yeah, so the interesting story is, like, I actually joined Google almost the same year when we had our first ideas for the first product. And at that time, I kind of had a chat with the guys and said, well, I could take this opportunity and do it, or we could just all go full time, give it all we got right now. But I think the 3 of us, we're still very young, still at the beginning of our careers, and kind of thought, none of us really know what it means to build a business. So the best kind of shot would have been to continue a little bit more into our careers at the time, me to kind of take on Google, and then obviously learn as much as we can from the others. And when I finally kind of made the leap and joined full time, I think we had, I think, the initial idea was formed into a proper product. We knew that we had a market for it. We knew that we were solving a real problem. Yeah. So it was turning from kind of scribbles on the back of a napkin into an actual kind of business opportunity.
And so that journey from a sort of robotic, the idea that you build something with robots in your garage or whatever it was, to actually kind of figuring out that the opportunity that Dexory now pursues today was the real one. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, it was our conservatory. So it didn't have a garage, but very similar, still very cold. We've had a few pivots throughout our journey. The first idea that we started with 10 years ago was looking at making robots for the home. We had a very noble vision, which was to help the elderly. very quickly realized, especially 10 years ago, technology was not really there for it, and it would have been extremely expensive. And also everyone wanted a robot that could go up the stairs, which even today, that's not really a thing. So we realized quite quickly we weren't be able to make a product that people could actually afford to buy. So we pivoted very quickly towards the retail space, customer service side of the business. And that started to take off quite quickly for us. And then from there, we entered retail, which I think was one of those pivotal moments that you're talking about around understanding. The moment you have customers coming to you asking for a solution to a problem they have, it's like, okay, we're on to something now. And then throughout the pandemic, we completely lost the retail market. We were quite lucky because we had just gotten our pre-seed round, we had the money in the bank, and we're like, okay, what are we going to do now? Because we have no customers, everything was closed. But the good part was like some of those retailers then kind of asked us, okay, can you do some of the stuff you're doing in the stores, but actually inside warehouses, and particularly looking at inventory tracking and inventory management, because throughout the pandemic, orders went over the roof, but no one really knew where things were. They couldn't get people inside the warehouses. So again, that was another pivotal moment where the market came to us with a problem. We're like, we might have a solution.
And do you still spend a lot of time with customers today, kind of hearing what they want next and what they, how they're experiencing your products?
A lot. And I think it's what kind of drives us and defines us as a company. Everything that we build, everything that we do comes from a customer insight, comes from a customer conversation. It's, I think, what's helped us to scale so quickly.
In this world of kind of fast-moving AI advances, how do you think about bringing to your customers the things that the technology best enables versus what they want, when maybe they don't always know what's possible or know what would be best for them?
It's not easy because sometimes we also don't know what's possible, right? It's everything moves at an insane speed. The beauty of what we do is that we have a lot of data and insight from inside these warehouses. I mean, we've got autonomous robots that scan and capture a lot of information. And sometimes we're thinking like, okay, what else can we extract from this data? And because it's never been done before, the customer can't really tell you. They've never had access to so much information. So in a way, it's a little bit of our role and our product team's role to try and extract information and insights from this, take them back to the customer, verify, is this going to be useful for you or not, and then go back and build it.
You're dealing with powerful technologies, right? AI is powerful, and we're, I think, only scratching the surface of what it can do. Robotics, again, we're only at the start of that journey, but these are kind of big things physically interacting with the world, and your robots particularly are kind of large things working in complex environments with lots of people. How do you think about responsibility, safety, those kind of topics when it comes to dealing with such powerful technologies in kind of real world environments?
It's a very, very big task. You're making some significant changes into the customer's workflow. So these are workflows that have been in place for tens of years, maybe even hundreds, right? Because logistics is one of the oldest industries that we have. Exactly. So disrupting it doesn't come easy. And the most important thing is to be able to build trust with your users. So a lot of the stuff that we do is when our systems make a decision or suggest a decision, we always try to explain where that decision is coming from to be able to give the user the confidence that is the right decision. Slowly, we'll be able to take more and more of that away, and people will be able to allow the AI and kind of the whole platform to work in the background and take it away from the user. But this kind of intermediate step is essential, because one kind of small mistake and they completely lose confidence, not just in your technology, but probably in any other types of AI technology. And it's kind of everyone's responsibility to make sure that we deliver the right product and in the right way to our users.
And how do you think about the different users? You've got, I guess, logistics executives who maybe buy the solution, and then warehouse managers who run an individual site, and then the people working in the warehouse kind of day to day. I guess they have to interact with your technology in different ways, but how do you think about those different kind of personas?
Yeah, it's very interesting because the level of tech savviness, of course, is different. The level of experience that they might have in their sectors is also different. And what we normally say at the end of the day, the person that is on the warehouse floor is the one that we're catering to, because they will be the ones kind of dealing with the challenges on a daily basis. And a lot of the times people that are in HQ or centrally, they don't even realize how complicated things are on the ground.
And what happens when you ship your 12 or 18 meter high robot into a warehouse and it turns up there on the first day and people go, what is this thing?
Yeah, it's always like that. That reaction is always kind of very interesting to capture. First of all, it's actually very quick to deploy solution. So the robots come into different boxes. We put the two parts together, just like a Lego block. Then we can already kind of start scanning. And within 3 to 5 days, our customers already have data. So usually for an automation project to be so quick to install, it's unheard of. Exactly. There's kind of two moments to it. One is when the boxes come and the team puts it together and they start doing the initial mapping of the site and teams have to see the robot. There's a lot of kind of explanation that we do, and we're being very, very patient to explain every single thing about the unit, again, to make sure that the people on the warehouse floor are comfortable with it. And then the second kind of aha moment is when you actually start showing them the data, which is usually 1 or 2 days later, and they can see the value almost instantly, which again then kind of reinforces the decision that, okay, yeah, this was the right thing to do. And it's not just a machine that's here to interfere with our work. It actually brings value to every single person inside the warehouse, because they understand that having the right thing in the right location is going to make the picking process faster, is going to make the orders shipping faster. So yeah, that value is very important to reinforce at the end of our deployment, so that everyone is aware of why we're doing things.
So you're obviously building really cutting edge AI and robotics products. You've got an amazing team of people doing that. How do you feel about the support that the wider ecosystem provides, whether that's the sort of big tech companies producing foundation models, whether that's kind of government and policymakers in the UK and Europe, elsewhere?
It's a very interesting ecosystem that kind of came together overnight, right? So it's still a lot of do's and don'ts and processes and architectures that still have to come together, I assume, and hopefully we'll kind of see that as it did behind fintech and other types of sectors. But what I really admire, I think, is the fact that things are moving at speed across all the different angles.
Yeah.
From a policy perspective, I think it's still a lot to come. What's interesting is as we grew, I think we're being asked for our opinion a lot more, which is fantastic to see, because policymakers, while they were trying initially to sort things by themselves and trying to kind of use their experience in other sectors, I think they realized quite quickly they're completely out of their depth. So it's great to see that they're reaching out to companies a lot more in the UK and across Europe as well, so that voice is properly heard from the industry. What I think will be great is to be able to get more collaboration happening, not just at the big tech level, but also at the smaller companies, the scale-ups like we are, and then be able to make sure that obviously the bigger guys don't just take over the whole ecosystem and the whole voice. So I think there's probably a little bit more that could be done for those that are up and coming. And also the most important one is to be able to explain to our own sector and our own, which is warehousing and logistics, what does it mean for them? Quite interesting to kind of be between tech and AI, and then it's a very traditional sector, which is warehousing logistics, and then helping them understand where we're going and why as well. So a lot of those elements that everyone's discussing around trust and kind of taking people on the journey has to happen to be able to then go to the bigger guys.
Let's talk a little bit more about the phenomenal team and culture you've built at Dexory. One of the things I've seen is that you've managed to build a culture where performance, delivery, results are really at the core of everything you do. And I'd love to know a little bit about how you've done that, how you've kind of managed the team in that way, and maybe a little bit about the kind of organizations that have inspired you that you've worked at previously. I'm sure some of the lessons from Google are a big part of that.
Yeah, and I think it's a combination of all of us 3 founders just naturally being extremely competitive and just thriving all the time to do more, to do better, and then individually have been like that most of our lives. The 3 of us also come from different careers that have nurtured and pushed that as well. Like myself, as you said, at Google and also at Telefonica, I was always part of the more agile teams that were bringing the products to market, really revolutionizing and disrupting the status quo. And then Adrian is part of his scale-up career at Just Eat, when Just Eat was really, really growing. And obviously there was a lot of pressure to deliver very fast. There was a very interesting culture there. And then Andre with his Formula One background, which of course, weekend after weekend, obviously there's one goal and everyone is going behind that. So I think the 3 of us working together from the start in that way, pushing each other to constantly strive, has then created a bit of a bubble around us that attracted very similar type of people. And we're quite fortunate to have a very diverse team. I think we're over 40, 50 nationalities now, people that have made significant life changes to move across the planet to work with us. Yeah. And automatically when they do that, of course, they want to make sure that they succeed, and they also help their colleagues succeed. And also when that doesn't happen, obviously kind of highlight where the issues are and when there might be a lack of performance. So it's kind of started from us, but it's now bubbling and bringing the right talent on board that has a very similar mindset as we do.
And when we invested, I think you were probably, when we started working together, I think you were probably 30 people. Maybe you could all sit in one room in the office. And I'm sure that meant that everyone saw how you were acting every day. Everyone was kind of, in that kind of very clear kind of culturally aligned environment. Today, I think almost 200, 180 or something. How has that changed? And as the team's got bigger, and I guess you don't know everyone, or you don't know everyone as well anymore, how have you still managed to make sure that the culture that you as founders want to instill in the organization is kind of carried forward to the next 20 people and the next 50 people?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because first of all, what we've learned, I think, quite quickly as we started to grow is that the culture necessarily that we had when we were 30 people is not necessarily exactly the same type of culture that you want to have when you're 180. Of course, there are some core fundamentals that will carry through. So obviously, we talked about performance. Yeah. Some of the others that we have are commitment, impact, and the fact that we work as a one team. Outside of that, there will be certain elements that have to evolve as the company grows as well. And some people that were with you at the beginning might not be the right ones for the next stages. I think with that comes also a certain level of process and architecture that you have to do. We're no longer a stage where we can just say, okay, we're going to throw everything at it and see what happens. Like, no, there has to be a continuity. There has to be a plan for next year and the year after. It's no longer like what's going to happen in 6 months. So I think one of the big things that we did is actually we brought our chief operating officer, Kristen, on board as a kind of another level of the exec. Her role is a lot focusing on that, is ensuring that it's not just about the culture, but how the culture transforms into process architecture of teams to be able to constantly deliver at scale. Geographically speaking, we're no longer in one room, we're now across multiple countries. But if you can go back to those core processes and the core operating principles that we have and keep reinforcing them in every single team, through every opportunity that you have, that kind of helps the culture to trickle. And the biggest one for us is to make sure that our teams and our leaders and the managers in our companies can also highlight when one of the performance metrics is off track and be able to do something about it.
Oana, I know you and your co-founders work incredibly hard, and I think even saying incredibly hard is probably an understatement. You know, you're on the road with customers here in the US, Asia. You're in your production site near Oxford. You're in London meeting, investors and advisors and other customers. How do you balance the sort of dedication and the commitment that building Dexory takes with, keeping yourself healthy, keeping yourself in a good mindset so that you can come in every day and be that leader, kind of motivate the team and give 100%?
I think I gave up a long time on the idea that this whole thing about work-life balance, because when work is your life, it's kind of work and work of life, life and life, right? So from my perspective, and probably kind of works for the other two as well, is just trying to find micro moments of breathing and relaxation within the madness. I just got a new puppy, so that kind of keeps me quite busy when I'm not on calls and when I'm not traveling. And the most important one for me, I think, is the distraction of the mind. So it's not necessarily I've got a day off now, I'm just going to sleep it off and not do anything and just kind of physically relax. For me, it's just kind of finding ways to disconnect my mind. So I listen to a lot of audiobooks. If I'm walking the dog, I try to just focus on the surroundings and the forest and where I am, just to have the small moments of my mind not focusing on the business and just going somewhere else for a little bit.
That resonates a lot. I think we're in a world where this idea of kind of hyper productivity, the fact that because you're connected at any time, because you can be on a Zoom call or a phone call at any time, you almost need to be, which in theory is hyperproductive because every minute of your day, every minute of your calendar can be full up. But sometimes that half an hour with the dog in the forest, I guess that is a kind of good kind of calming time.
And you kind of learn how to hyper optimize, I think, a lot of parts of your life. I mean, a very simple example is I was talking to somebody from a physical health perspective. I was telling them, like, well, I have to kind of walk the dog because otherwise, there's kind of biological limitations to that. And I think their kind of thought was like, well, you could wear a weight vest when you're walking your dog, which elevates your heart rate a little bit. So then you're kind of getting a workout out of it. So you're then starting to think, okay, how can I then maximize moments of my day to be able to go back to that personal goal that I have as well around kind of staying healthy, staying fit. Other things is like, if I have to kind of make a quick meal or even if I make a coffee, I just kind of play an audiobook and I listen to something else for a few minutes again to just kind of take me out of the rhythm. You learn more about these little tricks that you can do throughout your day to be able to balance.
With Dexory, you're obviously working at the intersection of a number of what have traditionally been very male-dominated industries, I guess, the manufacturing, the construction, robotics, warehousing, logistics in general. How have you, approached those as you built the team and the culture at Dexory, as you've hired people?
I think when we started, and probably for a very long time, I didn't really think about that as much. It's like I'm a woman in robotics, a woman in tech. We're dealing with venture capital as well, let's be transparent. It was still a very kind of lonely journey, I would say, as a female founder. But as you kind of go through the process and then you meet more and more people that are affected by it, then you realize that in a way, the fact you managed to make it so far, it's also a privilege. And then there's a lot that you can help others with and help coach and mentor them. So I actually I'm involved in a lot of kind of coaching and mentorship opportunities. And the biggest thing that I always tell people is telling your story is extremely important because you just never know who's listening and who can get a little bit of motivational or like a small tip or trick from what you've done that they can apply themselves in what they're doing. So I think I've changed a lot of my focus towards talking about what I do, trying to help others with small mentorship sessions here and there, or kind of guidance in trying to unlock a certain blocker that they're in, especially over the past, say, 2 years. Once I kind of realized, okay, I've managed to do all this, maybe I wasn't that conscious about it, but now potentially I could give some more back. And I think at Dexory, we're quite privileged because we do have quite a diverse team. I mean, apart from the nationality element, gender-wise, and a lot of different dimensions. And I think a lot of it has happened naturally because we've attracted a certain type of talent, but then also I think we were conscious of some decisions and ensuring that we have the right recruitment processes in place, that there's no biases in those conversations. And then also I think once people are on board, kind of performance already spoke for itself, and then we realize how we can build teams around that. But you have to make a little bit of an effort initially. And I think for us, especially in earlier stages, for a startup, it's quite hard because you can't afford to have lengthy recruitment processes and wait until you speak to a number of candidates, as we were doing at Google, for instance. But I think at the moment that shifts and you can actually afford to do that properly, you can definitely see a change in the whole organization.
The company's obviously grown at a phenomenal pace, and from the outside it can look very clearly like an up and to the right journey, but I'm sure there have been tougher times as a founder and times when you've had to ask yourself tough questions. Would love to hear a few reflections on particular learning points for you as a founder, for you as a founding team. And maybe as part of that, you could touch a little bit on that kind of moment going into the pandemic when your whole retail business dried up and you had to kind of figure out what was going to be next.
I mean, a lot of people are asking, like, do you have moments when you doubt yourself? It's like, is of this morning? Or it's like, this probably like happened 20 times already. So it's a continuous kind of challenge, I would say, to obviously build a team and build a business. We had some pretty big fundamental existential moments and questions that we've asked ourselves. And one of them was at that time, I think actually if I go back, the first one that we had was probably when we were trying to raise investment for a robotics company 10 years ago. And everyone was like, excuse me, hardware? What is that? And then like, no, you guys go away, build something, and then, we'll talk about it in a few years. And I think at that time we could have just said, okay, scrap this, just too complicated, let's just leave it and then go back to our normal careers where we could have made loads of money and be very comfortable and keep growing, right? But I think we were quite ambitious and determined that, okay, we want to build something of our own. And for myself, and I think for the other founders as well, it's not just about the passion about the product, the passion about the industry, but it's also the passion about building something of your own. And that's kind of what kept us going. So one point was then when we kind of said, okay, what other routes do we have? We went on and got public funding and grants, and luckily we could kind of get them from the EU at the time as well. Which then helped us build something. Then we went back onto the venture capital side of things. And then, the other big moment was the pandemic, which again, we could have just said, well, again, tough luck, let's just go back to what we were doing and carry on. But that glimmer of hope that we had from those customers coming in and asking us about the logistics space, we're like, wait a second, is this something interesting? So we had to learn a sector completely from scratch. We had no idea what warehousing was, what warehousing processes were, had to shadow a lot of people kind of on the warehouse floor, like night after night, and learned a lot from it. But I think it goes back to the fact that we were kind of determined we want to build something, and then let's see where that journey takes us and what exactly we can build.
You've obviously had to lead the team through some of these kind of pivotal transitional points as well. Some of the more fundamental ones like we just spoke about, but also, more recently, as Ambition has grown and as you've entered the US and as you've released the next product and the next product. Would love to hear a bit about what you've learned as a leader and how you've learned to inspire and motivate a team through some big leaps and some tough decisions.
I think as we transitioned markets, geographies, team sizes, funding rounds, there's a lot of moments where, as a founder especially, the darker sides and the challenges and the perils that the business can go through. And a very important one is to make sure that fear doesn't pass over to the team. Obviously being realistic, and they need to understand where you are and what the stage is, but without kind of letting that interfere with their work. And then the paralysis comes in. Okay, what do we do now? We're just not going to move ahead. So I think the biggest learning I've had is to ensure that in front of the team, you always kind of have the drive and the motivation, no matter what doubts you might have behind the closed doors. And another big one is going back to those core principles that are guiding us, which is the impact, the performance, the commitment, and the one team, and reinstating them. Because I think when things go a bit rough, going back to the basics is usually what kind of helps people reground themselves, and then, okay, we're now kind of going back on our way. And with that as well, kind of having very strong OKRs and goals in place that you know that you're trying to achieve, and then you monitor that achievement, how close you are to it as well, which also kind of keeps the team motivated. And different people will have different personal ways of getting motivated. And I think also as managers, understanding that is something that we're getting a bit better at as founding team, but also as our kind of leadership team and all the managers down from there. And then, I think it's finding that mix between the process that we have kind of put together, the values of and the operating principles of the company, and then a little bit of personal motivation as well on top.
Well, thank you so much for coming and having a chat. It's been a really enjoyable conversation and a real privilege to be working with you and your co-founders and the phenomenal Dexory team. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Ben, and love it to be working together as well. And keep pushing this forward.